Hey, welcome to Public Expression. And again, this podcast is all about bringing public sector creatives together to just have a conversation about workflow, about life, work-life balance, interesting projects that we've worked on in the past. As you all probably know by now, I worked for the Air Force for about 24 years. Did 13 years active duty in uniform, another decade plus as a GS, working for the Air Force in San Antonio, Texas. And so now I get to work with Adobe, so I get to meet just really cool people all over the country. And one of those folks I'm really excited to have with me today, Christopher Shepard. I think you go by Shep.
Yeah, yeah, most people call me Shep.
Awesome, man.
Yeah,
Yeah. So Shep is one of
thanks for
these guys that, dude, no, it's a pleasure to have you on. You're one of those guys that when I meet you, it's, every once in a while you travel someplace and you meet somebody and you're like, this is a connection I don't ever want to lose because you just meet at a level of like just creative energy. You're excited about the things that other people look at you with a side eye. Like really, but you're one of those guys. So I'm super excited to like have you here and continue that conversation today.
well, thanks, man. I was excited to meet you and hear you worked for Adobe, but I can always find the filmmaker in the room, and it was really cool to hear your expertise. Whenever I got to hear you speak at that first conference, but then be able to connect with you on storytelling and filmmaking, which is what I'm truly passionate about.
Yeah, and that's why I'm doing this still today. I don't get to make a whole lot of video projects anymore. Adobe keeps me well employed. I kind of jumped into macro cell phone photography for fun just to keep my creative energy going. Maybe I'll even
Yeah,
jump into some mobile cinematography. I've been toying around with that a little bit. But yeah, these kind of conversations are just energizing. And I had asked you before we started the chat today if you would indulge me because I found this book. And I think this is the reason why I'm sharing this is because like when we live a creative life, it's not just a 9 to 5, right? It's not just taking pictures. It's like everything can be inspiration, right? So I found this book.
should be.
I'm not sure. It might be
Behave yourself.
backwards. Yeah,
Behave
behave
yourself. I love
yourself.
it.
Okay. So this book is nearly 100 years old. My wife and I found it at an antique bookstore. And what this is a book that was geared towards high school students in the 1930s. It's called Etiquette for American Youth. Some of this stuff is hysterical. Some of it is like, you know what? That's a good lesson to kind of remember. But there's a few things in here that as I kind of went through, I had to stop and look at. This one is from chapter 12, The Gift of Gab. It says, conversation is an art and not a line in the sorry, conversation is an art and not a line that ropes in the victims. Its chief ingredients are a pleasing voice, a variety of interests, the ability to listen, and a genuine sympathetic interest in other people. I might change that to empathetic, but sign of the times back then, right? I just thought that was great.
That's real
Just
good.
right? I mean, it's one of these books almost 100 years old, but the idea that having a variety of interests, the ability to listen, and to have empathetic, I would say, interest in others is what makes great conversation. And I think that's why the podcast form is really making a strong comeback, right? People just want to hear people have genuine conversations because otherwise we're just getting yelled at on TV and social media. So
Well,
enough
I
with
mean,
that.
that's really what pulled me into this. I don't wanna redirect, but I hear about, stuff like that, and it excites me because, you know, I think what has made my career so special, is documentary filmmaking, and the very, very first thing I ever created, um, whenever I got my first camera, I was 14 years old, and I went and shot, a little documentary. I shot a bunch of interviews with strangers, and it was interesting. It just unlocked something in me where I was like, well, I like talking to strangers, as it is. That was just kind of, even as a kid, my mom would tell some stories about going shopping in Walmart. And I just didn't want to go, so I would sit out front, and she said she'd get done and she'd come out and there'd just be like four homeless guys sitting there talking to me, and I remember that too because I just wasn't afraid to talk to anybody. And then getting a camera, and when you kind of like, have this, it's like I call my camera a fidget spinner, because it's like my social grounding mechanism, and it allows me, who already I love talking to people and talking to strangers, but it gives me an extra in, and sometimes even a conversation starter. So starting there, I loved that aspect of filmmaking, but started professional video production. And so I went to work for ABC at like 16. And
Wow.
I was, yeah, it was a local affiliate. Shout out to Tracy Slayton, my very first boss. He he showed me how to hustle, and he showed me what it was like cutting, at least one 30-second commercial a day, and then doing the voiceover for them, just got to be exposed to everything, as well as, really heavy equipment because I was the guy that got to carry all the heavy stuff.
They
But
were like, a young back, please."
I was, they were
Yeah,
like, "Oh, thank God he's here." And he still has a smile on his face, you
right.
know?
He has the same knees. He has the same knees he was born with. You know, like
Exactly. Exactly. And they didn't even have to feed me. But yeah, so, you know, I just stuck with it. I just really like anytime I had an opportunity to shoot something, if anybody asked to shoot something, I said yes, yes, yes. And couldn't afford to go to like film school. So, went to community college and my photography teacher there, I kind of go back to these people that they're professionals, they're in what they do, but I just find the passionate people, and I know the passionate people tend to find me too. And my photography teacher, he saw my interest in it. He gave me unlimited access to the dark room, unlimited access to all of the stuff, the equipment and everything, and then introduced me to Ansel Adams and you know and his philosophy, and just kind of introduced me to now this technical philosophical side of photography. And yeah, and then lots of stuff happened, but one of the ways you and I connected, I found it interesting that you had shot for the Air Force. One of the very first opportunities I got kind of in the world, I was shooting weddings and cutting my teeth there in Houston, Texas. And the Houston wedding industry is crazy. It's huge. It's literally one of the biggest in the country. And right around the time the 5D came out and it was shooting video,
oh, yeah.
I was in that group of
The
guys.
DSLR revolution.
It was a revolution, and it was crazy after shooting mini DV tape and going,
Yeah.
it's like if you've done all of that, you realize how hard it is to get your work done. You know what I mean? And so slowly throughout time, all of these little just the hassle, the thing that keeps me from being able to tell the story, they're slowly going away, which is kind of
Mhm.
cool, with Adobe and everything else, camera technology. But I got to shoot, this mini documentary in Afghanistan, which I didn't get paid for. I went, and I ended up spending, about a week in Afghanistan and then several more days in Kuwait, shooting with the military there and living in the barracks. And
When were you in
um,
Afghanistan?
it was 2011, summer of 2011.
Okay. I was
So
there, 2009, 2010.
interesting. Well,
Yeah.
so I stayed in at Bagram Air Force Base.
Oh, yeah, I'm
And
very familiar with Bagram. Oof.
yeah,
Anytime I'd stop there, it was like, "I hope this is a quick stop."
there's a
They did
lot.
have they had the food and all that, but it was just, it was not the most pleasant,
Yeah.
environment. But
Yeah, it was a war zone.
they had all the food. They had all the food options,
Yeah, that was part of what I was there filming. I was filming this private organization, had raised a ton of money and was putting on essentially like a USO show, but privately funded. It was really cool. But that was life changing because like some of the documentaries, I actually remember I was shooting an interview with I believe it was a Black Hawk pilot, this helicopter pilot, and you know just getting to hear his story and getting to kind of disarm him and pull him out of the moment and like where we were because we were in the middle of the hangar, and we're in the middle of this interview and all of a sudden they all scramble, and it was just I don't even
Mhm.
know what caused the scramble, or what the signal was, but everyone was gone, helicopters were leaving. And I kind of asked like what's going on, and they're like, helicopter went down. There's guys out there missing, and
Yeah.
some dead, you know what I mean? And it was like, whoa,
Reality
and
hits.
reality hits, and you're like you're a filmmaker and you got a camera and you're pointing your camera at these things. And anyway, um, came back from that and ended up getting some really big commercial clients, which is kind of what pulled me into commercial directing. And I had started a production company in Houston, and these commercial clients just kind of kept coming back. I think the work was really good. I think we were producing really good work, and we were easy to work with, and I think we could find really cool stories. So trying to find those really interesting stories, I think is a really valuable tool as a filmmaker and like furthering your career because I remember kind of hearing some cliches earlier on when I was bidding projects or trying to win work and people be like, "Ah, another oil and gas company or another, whatever kind of cliche, boring, thing." And I don't know, I just never really looked at them. I never looked at any of those projects quite the same as other people. They're just I kind of found these like
Yeah.
interesting aspects of everything and asked different questions to different people and, just went a little bit further. And it's amazing when you start asking people questions, you realize most people don't ever get the opportunity to tell you about themselves. Not very many
Right.
people actually ask questions to other folks. Um, so yeah,
I
you know,
love that actually. So it's interesting you mentioned that because I think that the one thing that keeps popping up in these conversations is curiosity.
yeah,
Curious people make good storytellers, whatever that format may be, whether it's a commercial, it can be a great story, right?
yeah,
There's a story behind everything, quite frankly, and not all are created equal.
no,
Some are more interesting than others.
yeah.
But man, I got a couple things I want to talk to you about, but I have to make a small pivot. I did tell you about my experience in Afghanistan, right? Or is this the first time we're connecting
I,
on that?
I don't think we were busy the times that we were together. And so,
Yeah.
and I know I was talking your ear off about I was trying to get a bunch of questions asked and answered about frame.io.
About Adobe stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I was really
Yeah.
like, "Man, I got the
My
Adobe
job,
right
the
here."
reason I the reason why I was there, like
Yeah,
yeah.
I
No,
wanna hear though. Tell me about it.
I'll tell it real quick just because I actually had a whole conversation on the podcast with my partner in crime who did this adventure with me in Afghanistan. But I think you'd be interested in it just because of the type of work you were doing that brought you there. But I had the opportunity to do one of the best things I ever did in my career, which was travel Afghanistan for 35 straight days, me and a photographer.
Wild,
And we basically told the story of wherever we landed. So, literally
wild.
spent time with, the Swedes, the Finns, Canadians. The Canadians were really the ones that had tanks there. I thought that was amazing. And we literally just hopped on space available travel wherever we could and went to the next place. And basically, what I did, you'll appreciate this from a video production perspective. I shot on a Sony V1U,
Oh,
the
wow.
HDV tape. I had
Wow.
a
I have
laptop.
one of those. I have one of those cameras still working. I'll send you a
Oh,
picture. I have a
dude, that was
work
my baby. And
that's
I had to, as you know how those work, I shot whatever I saw that day, captured it, edited it, and turned it around and uploaded the same day for 35 straight days.
on
It
DV. I
was
I
a
actually
bear.
haven't heard of many people in the DV days, especially, like, with that and being, like, a one man run and gun. That's early
It was a
days for,
vlog.
like, same
It
day
was.
edit stuff.
I had to tell people what a vlog was. The people that it's a video blog. Like they didn't, it was that new at the time. But yeah, anyway, I'll send you a link later on. You could check it out. It still exists online.
If you have
You'll see a
photos
very young version of me.
if you have photos, I wanna see, because like, travel setups were really difficult back then, like, getting
They're
a
awful.
laptop and then if you needed tape deck capture, I don't know if you were doing all anyway, I would love to see a
Yeah.
photo because I never
I
found
did it from the camera. I just went directly FireWire
nice,
back then into the
nice,
laptop to do it. But yeah, anyway,
nice.
we can nerd out on that forever. But what I want to focus on, because like I said, this particular podcast is focused towards public sector creatives.
Yeah,
Um, I know we met when you were working in Texas, but
yeah,
from what I understand, you and many others, and a lot of my friends have gone through quite a transition over the last year. A
yeah.
lot of them who once worked in public sector found themselves working outside of it. And I understand you kind of went through that transitional process as well. And so I'd love to hear about, what did you love about working in public sector? And then how have you managed this transition, this change? And what is like inspiring you now?
Yeah, good question. I might have to ramble just for a moment. So, I had built that production company in Houston, and then, through just a lot of life changes and everything else, I ended up selling that company and kind of transitioning. And I went freelance kind of for a bit. I was doing the freelance director thing, but I had like a young baby at home, and all this stuff was going on in my life. So looked for some sort of transition, and I ended up pitching some commercials to director of marketing for our city, the city I lived in, and, a couple months later ended up getting hired, to work in city government as a multimedia specialist. And, it was really interesting going into well, first of all, coming from building a production company and really also in kind of the wild west of production company times, as far as like lots of new technology came out from 2010 when I started to 2022-ish whenever I finally sold. It was wild just the change in technologies across the board, not just cameras, but like everything. So I felt like I was bringing, a lot of that with me. But then once I got there, it's like, I thought maybe I could improve some of the processes that I had been doing for years, but then coming into the public sector, like they've been doing things the same way for a very long time, and they don't have people very often walking in with that much experience. It was kind of a just an interesting opportunity all around, for me to kind of walk in, probably overqualified for that position, and just try and learn. I tried to approach with as much curiosity, not really try and go in and change things, 'cause I know what that does to a creative team too, like, just trying
Yeah.
to go in and change everything, and it's like, uh, that also messes with the output, but, kinda going in there, seeing how things were done, seeing what their needs were, I think that was the biggest kinda change because, in public sector versus I worked so heavily in advertising,
Yeah.
you're not selling a product, so the overall story and the messages are different, very different personalities to please, very different like performance indicators on social media than like an oil and gas company, which I would say that's probably like 80% of my career has been like that type of stuff, highly specialized like commercial advertising for oil and gas and nuclear and stuff like that. Anyway, so going in there, started doing commercials for tourism and also all of the other kind of stuff that they needed, as well as kind of getting like a younger team who didn't have a lot of video or photo experience. First of all, kind of training them up, and answering any questions they had, and then showing them how to implement. Because I think going in there, um, it's not a lack of creativity, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of times people
Right.
are just they're stressed out because they know that there's something that's gonna cause kind of issues to get between, this thing that they're talking about with the city manager or whatever, and the final product. It's like it's not just producing a video. There's a lot of personalities in between and revisions and, input and legalities, whatever.
Mhm.
Uh, so working your way through that, I don't know. It was even because I've dealt with some customers where I had a lot of those types of challenges to deal with, but I think in government, I would say that volume dial was definitely turned up. So
Would you say, there's so what I think is interesting about this, because you had such heavy experience in the commercial side before coming into government. Um, you get into government, right?
mhm,
Or any creative that gets in there, and they have big ideas, and
yeah,
it's challenging because you end up working in an environment where you might know, and you probably worked with a bunch of creatives from your left and to your right that have been there a long time and have already been
yeah,
told no so many times that it
yeah,
gets kinda tough.
yeah.
I'm curious from your perspective, looking at the commercial side versus the public sector side, because I didn't do much on the commercial side.
Okay.
My perspective has always been, I feel like it's harder on the public sector side, but on the commercial side, I've always heard, well, you know what, budgets are hard, and you deal with executives in a company that may say this or that. But
Yeah.
from somebody like yourself who's been in, deeply in both of those worlds, like, how do you compare and contrast them?
It's interesting. Good. That's good questions. And I'm gonna probably I'll quote some of my mentors, because like it's just so different. Pitching in commercial, pitching as a freelancer, pitching, owning a production company, whatever. Uh, you're going in there. I mean, there's similar principles. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to again approach with curiosity, and you're trying to put something really really creative in front of your specific audience. So you're showing these people first of all, I paid attention. I know what you need, and I'm gonna package this in a way that even makes sense for you. Because I'm marketing my pitch to you. Um, so I feel like I got really good at that, skilled at that, and it was kind of second nature. And then, but I was working with primarily the people who were coming from the company to hire my agency or the agency, the ad agency that was hiring us to handle production. Typically, a lot of creative people or who would consider themselves creative industry workers have been around creativity, like the creative industry. Um, Going into government, there's not that many people. I would say that
Yeah.
that's probably the biggest difference. And so as far as knowing your audience, it's still your job as the creative person in the room to know the audience and to approach with curiosity and solve the problem, but then also meet them where they're at their experience level, understand what you can and can't say and what's going to kind of derail it and make it feel too big, because I think that was one of I mean, you got to see me. We met at the Texas Association of Telecommunications Advisors and Officials Conference. It was a
Rolls
very
off the
long
tongue.
Tatoa conference, where I was elected to the board. So I served on the board for about a year, and um, yeah, I mean, I got to really see a lot of the state at that point, like a lot of the people who were in my same position, and I think um, that's the struggle. It was like everyone has great ideas, but they could never figure out how to put it in front of, maybe somebody who doesn't have a huge imagination.
Yeah.
And I got the reps in doing that. Like I got the repetitions and I got the no's hundreds of times in the commercial world and dealt with so many boring old, you know, executives or whatever. But I also towards the end of like I said, owning that production company and being a freelancer, I watched if I put the right pitch in front of that customer, I can make them cry. I've made rooms full of like old white haired guys cry over there, like literally a lick.
What is this wet stuff falling from my face?
I know.
What have you done to
I
me,
didn't even
Shep? What have
hear.
you done?
Yeah, yeah. It was just like and then but that's the key, because that's where, as a commercial director, you get people emotionally attached. That's where,
Yeah.
all right, they got some money to spend on this. Here's now all the no's go away. And city government finding what is gonna make the no's go away,
Mhm.
to your project and to get it, like, as close to what you want, I think is much more difficult. And I think everything I produced there, I will say was further from, you know, my own specific taste, but I was fulfilling, the wishes and the requests
Yeah.
essentially of something much bigger and a lot, I don't know all of the strategy of government. I tried to, learn it. And yeah, it was honestly great, and meeting you at Tatoa and getting to really meet all of these people across the state of Texas who do this job. I mean, you got to meet them too in
Yeah.
November.
Oh, they're amazing.
And
Amazing
we
work,
all
and I get to stick around for the awards thing, which is super cool.
it was
Um,
oh, that's right. That's right.
yeah. Yeah, I think, something you said that I think is interesting is the art of the pitch is kind of, necessary in both worlds, but on the public sector side, you don't always know who the real decision makers are.
Yeah.
And so you can be making the pitch to a decision maker that you think is the only person in the sphere of influence. Then later on, you get something back and it's like, nope, we can't do this because you're like, well, wait a minute, why? Well, because the people in this other agency or this other, that own this other process have said no. It's like, well, I didn't even know they were there. And you can research this stuff all up and down and you can ask all the questions, but you don't always get them
Yep.
answered. Where I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, on the commercial side, the line of authority is a little clearer. It's like, well, these are the people with the money. These are the people that you have to convince. These are the people you have to get on board. Whereas in government, the money's split all over the place sometimes. So
Yep.
if you need a budget, it's like, oh, well, it's okay. Like for instance, I did a basic training documentary and basic training, like here in Lackland Air Force Base, Texas, wanted it. But the idea I pitched required money to send my group around the country to film trainees prior to them arriving to basic training. Basic
Oh, okay.
training had no money for that at all.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I got to bring in a partner. And so I had worked at recruiting service in a prior life. And so I kind of knew about them and I reached out to them. And plus, they'd be the best avenue for this particular project because they can put it on their YouTube where everybody goes to find out about the Air Force anyway and brought them into the fold, and that's how we got funding for it. So it was it because but it took all that level of experience and connections of having at that point worked in the Air Force for what 18 years, right?
Yeah.
So I knew people, I knew who to call, but I mean I could never have done that project another point in my career because it would have stopped. They would have said,
Yeah.
"Oh, we love it, but we can't pay for that. So sorry, just do a small video on this one little piece of basic training that's changing." And that's tough for I think public sector folks.
I agree. I mean, it also would stop if you would have taken no for an answer, and I do think that it's important to push past, and not just take that initial no and, lay the groundwork to where you can push past the no, but Yeah, I mean, you just said it too, approaching with curiosity. You really figure out what can what would make them say yes, and then
Yeah.
do your absolute best to creatively, kind of pitch that. And
Yeah.
I will say it was definitely harder in government. You're right, as far as kind of being able to identify just the amount of time that something could potentially take. There's a lot,
Yeah.
um, but but it was still fun. I learned so much, and I got some really interesting opportunities. You and I have been obviously keeping in contact here and there, and I'm always texting you about Frame IO. I've been like
Yeah.
a Frame IO nerd for a long time, like really probably 10 years. I'll tell you, one of my mentors and my absolute favorite editor, his name's Lucas Harger. He works for Bruton Struby up in St. Louis, and they produce phenomenal work. And he supervised a couple of edits for my studio, and he did one of my edits. It's on my website. It's called Main Event Prologue, and but he introduced us to Frame, real early on, back before it was owned by Adobe, and it was kind of bare bones, but it was still I knew it was just going to I knew it was gonna be a game changer. I really
You
did.
saw it. Yeah, you
I
saw it.
saw it because it
Yeah.
was solving issues, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I really I've always hated it, and but I needed feedback, and I was always willing to take
Mhm.
feedback on things, but it was a frustrating process going through emails and being, honestly, slightly dyslexic.
Mhm.
Like some of even emails were kind of an issue, and dates and stuff like this. Spreadsheets. My brain doesn't work all that great with a spreadsheet, and I get
Right.
these huge. That was the way to do it. So
But you put a timestamp on your timeline and with a comment, you know what you're looking at. Yeah. Actually, I'm
yeah,
glad you mentioned the technology because I know now you have made a shift from that public sector life back to commercial work. But I
yeah,
think one of the things you and I have always connected on is just the technology. So
yeah.
I promised folks that I try to keep us around 30 minutes and we're getting
Okay,
close. So
okay,
I want to make sure that we talk about what you're doing now. Like, what
yeah,
is exciting to you now? What are you looking forward to? There's a lot of like, disruption in our creative space, right? And then, one of the things I do in my main job is I go around and I help people understand what that disruption is,
yeah,
from an Adobe perspective anyway. But I'm curious about like where you are now, where you're going,
yeah,
and what are you excited about with the technology that's coming, and what are some reservations you may have, and then how are you
yeah.
trying to like buffer that?
Good question. I'll try and keep it short. So, you know, after doing so much video production, and film production for 15 years commercially, you know, I've seen so many campaigns and I've seen my videos plug into very just tons of campaigns. And what I really want to do, I want to be kind of a little bit higher up on the strategy side of things. And so I recently started a new company. It's called Bull Market Brand Strategy, and we're going into just different any type of customer, and really listening to what they need creatively, listening to what branding could do for them. And, video and photography is obviously a huge part of that, but I kind of want to, creatively direct not just the individual pieces and how they look. I want to put it all together, because I think storytelling is key. And I think placing the story in a certain way at a certain time, like I just really think about the strategy of getting somebody to watch something with the intent of changing their mind or challenging a belief.
Yeah.
So all of that being said, that's my ultimate goal. There's so many hurdles in between that, and a lot of it comes down to I'm not that organized. I can't remember things that well. All of these things, stuff takes a long time. Files take time to transfer. I'm just slowly seeing, I see this huge argument about AI all the time. Obviously
Yeah.
there's the good, the bad, the ugly, and I've been using it in a way that has just been it's been life changing. I mean, really, it's kind of doubled my output, and I'm using AI to pull hurdles out of my workflow, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And as I do that, as I'm being curious about my own workflow and trying to improve it, I'm listening to customers now, and I'm seeing these opportunities. So one thing that's kind of interesting, I just won a pretty big commercial pitch, but up and above that commercial pitch, I'm already talking to this company about, hey, you're talking about getting on TikTok. You want to increase this. That's going to take X, Y, Z. It's going to take a lot of content. It's going to take, someone out in the field paying attention to storytelling, but it also takes a lot of back end technology. It used to be hard drives and computers and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And now if somebody understands the tools that are available, but corporations, they don't have time to go to Adobe conferences all the time. It'd be great if they could. They don't
Yeah.
know all of
Or
these things.
NAB even.
Exactly. And so it's kind of like it's our jobs as the people using this and trying to remove our own hurdles, identify how those hurdles affect your customers. Because a lot of times those hurdles are what are stopping them from hiring you. So whenever I explain to them, hey, the cameras now hook up the frame, everything's gonna be uploaded automatically. Watch folders exist, kind of walking through this
Yeah.
amazing frame file management system and showing them that they can see everything now. Oh, and now we've got text-based editing. So if you and your team that you wanna have a meeting, because 'cause they're gonna wanna have meetings and talk about this stuff anyway, here's a transcript. Go search.
Yeah.
Go search for this stuff, and give them something to do. I don't know.
So you're
But
you're excited about the technology because you're seeing how it's gonna be able to, like you said, increase your output. That's the camp I'm in as
100%.
well. And
Yeah,
the message I always want people to kind of take away from conversations they have with me is that if you can do it with people, cameras, lights, C-stands, sandbags, do it, right? I'm fully behind that. I still think that is the most impactful, and I think because we're going to have so much more generated content, it's going to
yeah,
make the reel even more interesting.
yeah,
However, not everything requires that level of cost and production.
yeah,
And there's a lot of stories that can be told in the smaller formats that might have a 24-hour life cycle,
yeah,
right? We're talking TikTok, we're talking Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, all that kind of stuff. And so, what I see in this coming world is an amplification of a need for creatives who
yeah,
understand how to maybe take. We're going to do a 10-minute long short form video for YouTube, but then we also need to make lots of 30-second snippet videos that are impactful that get the message
yeah,
out there, and we have to create branding material and icons, and we have to create, maybe we're even going to create a blog series that goes with, I mean, all the things now. When you have a mind that's not just focused on a singular product, but now, like you're talking about, the big picture, how do we get the company, or in the public sector environment, maybe the agency or the state and local government we work with, to start saying, how do we not just focus on the one thing? Oh, the mayor has a speech. Well, what is the mayor talking about? What do we want to follow up after this? What
mhm,
formats is this going out in? Like, there's so many more things that can come in the picture. And that is where AI helps that lift, because now we're not having to recreate the wheel 75 times or that kind of thing, right? You can start generating workflows using AI tools to help some of that gap, right? So
yeah.
yeah, that's really interesting. Dude. First of all, congratulations on the new company. I
Thanks,
think
man.
that's exciting. That's exciting news. I'll definitely look forward to keeping in touch with you and seeing where that goes.
Yeah,
Um, I think,
it's
yeah,
fun.
it's a weird time, but I think it's an exciting time, and I think the people that will remain successful are folks like you who are staying curious, who are testing out technology, and you're finding ways that technology can help you. Like, your shortfalls, and you're finding the technology to kind of pick that part up for you. I love that. I think that's smart.
Well, I think it's great. I mean, the last thing that I would kinda leave with, on that note is, you know, especially for creatives, develop your taste. Taste is kinda what drives everything you just talked about. It's your taste, and it's the thing that AI can't yet learn yet. I don't know, we'll see what happens.
Well, what it
Um,
can do is, if you make, and I can't help it because you made me think about it, but like in the Adobe world, right? They have Firefly custom models where if Shep had a look for a brand, you could do all the photography, or if you're an illustrator, all the illustrations, and you could create your own custom model. Then you could build off of that. So it
yeah.
is kind of cool, but you got to have the vision and the look. Sorry, go ahead. That got me excited because I can see how you could use it. It's kind of
Eh,
cool.
I mean, that's it, because taste is important and taste will steer you away from the gimmicks. And you and I have been in this, I guess, long enough. You've seen some of the gimmicks come
Oh
and
yeah,
kind of fade. You saw drones come out. You saw the movie, or I don't know if we can use brand names and stuff, but like the
it's fine.
gimbals, you saw when they came out. You saw, yeah. I mean, I saw when digital photography came out, and that was a gimmick. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like there's gimmicks to it, and one of my mentors told me, don't drive any of your content with a gimmick. You know what I mean? Like, it should be all story based, and it should just be helping your story. And so your taste, if you have good taste, you're not gonna overuse things in the wrong way, and you'll be focused on the story.
yeah. All right. So last thing, where can people find your work? Learn more about you if they want to connect with you.
Yeah. Yeah, my Instagram handle, I didn't think very clearly about that. It has some underscores in it. So you can search me on Instagram. It's Christopher Shepard, and it's, three underscores Shep and then two underscores. But if you go to my website, it's shepardchristopher.com. And you can easily either get in contact with me there, see. But I'd love people, check out some of my work, look at my film that played at the Austin Film Festival. It was a huge project, and all story driven.
Yeah, I could see us following up this conversation because I didn't even get to jump into your style, which I think you have a very unique looking style. So I definitely encourage people to check out your work. So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
man, thanks. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you coming out here. And for everybody listening, again, this is Public Expression. It's kind of like my little side hustle podcast because I miss talking to really smart creatives every day. And just as I'm sure you do as well when you get kind of locked in your own silo of work. So hopefully, those of you listening and watching this inspires you. Again, stay creative and behave yourself. Yeah, there we go. We'll end with that.